Right, so for the past 6 months, I've been under the impression that Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal was going to be happening next, and I've heard a lot of people telling me that Masvidal's going to be ducking Usman. Colby Covington said that Masvidal's going to price himself out of a title shot, and he's going to get the immediate rematch. There's a lot of things going on. Usman was accusing Masvidal of ducking him. Masvidal was saying that the UFC weren't willing to pay him enough to fight Kamaru Usman. Here's the situation. Is Jorge Masvidal ducking Kamaru Usman? People were saying that at the beginning and a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, don't be silly, no one would duck anyone in the UFC, they're all fighters, it's for the belt, as if Masvidal would pass up an opportunity to have the gold belt around his waist that he's wanted for his entire career. Since he started in MMA, he's wanted that belt around his waist to say that he's the best guy to ever do it. He says it every interview, there's no way he would turn down an opportunity to fight Kamaru Usman, but then he called out Nate Diaz. Pretty undefensible. I was hearing rumours that Usman was maybe injured. Those turned out not to be true. Kamaru Usman is not injured. In fact, Ali Abdelaziz was even offering Conor McGregor to fight Kamaru Usman. Now, let's talk about that for a second. A lot of news people and the MMA media have been coming out and saying that McGregor has been offered a £170 title shot. No, he hasn't. Ali Abdelaziz asked Conor McGregor if he wants to fight Kamaru Usman over Twitter. I don't know if anyone's a business brain here, but business deals don't get made over Twitter. You know, you got to send a fight contract over. The UFC has to authorize it as well and say, yes, we don't mind this fight being made. They have to mediate the whole situation. And McGregor hasn't been offered a £170 title shot. Ali Abdelaziz just asked him if he wanted it over Twitter. Let's calm down, okay? Either way, Masvidal is ducking Usman. Usman's still in the game because Ali Abdelaziz seems to be offering guys to fight him. So clearly Usman is looking for an opponent right now and is healthy, okay? Masvidal is healthy and looking for an opponent right now. He's the number one contender. For the longest time, he has been told that he's fighting for the title against Kamaru Usman. Okay, Kamaru Usman has been told that you are fighting Jorge Masvidal. Kamaru Usman has told Jorge Masvidal that he will be fighting him next. Masvidal has told Kamaru Usman that he will be fighting him next. Now, all of a sudden, the title shot that Masvidal's wanted for his entire career is right there in front of him against a guy who he says he will expose and is way better than and stands no chance against him. And he's looking for a Nate Diaz rematch. Nobody wants to see that Nate Diaz rematch. We saw it the first time. Nate Diaz got the shit beat out of him for 3 rounds. I know there's a lot of controversy about Nate Diaz would have maybe came back in the 4th and 5th. Okay, well, those are maybes. And what we do know is what we watched was 3 rounds. And Masvidal beat the shit out of Nate Diaz for all 3 of them. Okay, fair enough, Diaz was starting to look a little bit better as the fight went on, but let's be real, it was domination. Some of those rounds could have been 10-8s. There was no way, unless Nate got a finish, that he was going to be able to rally to the judges at the end of the 5th round. Either way, Masvidal has been offered a title shot against Kamaru Usman. He's turned it down. I know he's ducking Kamaru Usman. There's no other explanation for that whatsoever. Unless Usman is injured, which he's not. Unless Usman has another fight, which he doesn't, then Masvidal's ducking Usman. Masvidal is in a situation where he could either fight for $500,000 to show against Kamaru Usman, and I know his contract because I've looked it up. He can fight for $500,000 to show against Kamaru Usman, or he could fight for $500,000 to show against Nate Diaz. In any other situation, picking between 2 fighters does not mean you're ducking one of them. It just means that you find the other fighter a bit of an easier matchup, which I don't blame Masvidal for. But this isn't every other situation, or any other situation. Usman has the belt. £170 world title, the world championship, to say that Usman is the best welterweight on earth right now. Masvidal, for his entire career since he started MMA, has said he wants nothing more than to have the strap around his waist to tell him that he's the best fighter to ever do it at his weight class. That's all he's said throughout his entire career. Now he's got the opportunity that only 1 or 0.1% of fighters, I'll go even lower, 0.1% of fighters get the opportunity to fight for the belt. Masvidal has been offered that opportunity, and he said no, he wants Nate Diaz in a rematch instead. He's ducking Usman. Why would you not want to fight for the world title that you've been working towards your entire career and instead face a guy that you just beat up and we all saw it happen? Instead, you want to fight him again. He doesn't want Kamaru Usman. I think Kamaru Usman would beat Jorge Masvidal. I've always said that, even though I'm a huge Masvidal fan and not a huge Kamaru Usman fan, because let's face it, who is? No one, literally no one. He's the He's a champion in a division where no one cares about the champion, pretty much. And you can see it by Masvidal turning down a fight with him. No one really cares about the champion. You've got Nate Diaz, you've got Colby Covington, you've got Woodley fighting coming up soon. You've got Jorge Masvidal included. McGregor fights at 170 here and there now and again. Fair enough, it isn't against 170-pound opponents either way. He fights at 170 here and there. 170 division has all of the stars, but a champion no one cares about. But Masvidal ducked him. He turned him down. An opportunity to fight for the belt was there, and Masvidal said, no, I want to fight Nate Diaz in a rematch instead. That's a bitch move. Just me who thinks this? Jorge Masvidal bitched out of fighting Kamaru Usman? I don't know, man. Seems pretty real. I mean, I remember an altercation between Masvidal and Usman where they got face-to-face, and Masvidal said he's going to end him and said he's going to do all of this stuff to him. He's going to baptize him. He's going to remove him from the division. He's going to beat him for everyone, and now he's been given the opportunity in the contract. He's saying no. I don't understand what he thinks is going to happen. Does he think if he beats Nate Diaz again, the UFC is going to offer him $5 million to fight Kamaru Usman? Because the rematch between him and Nate Diaz is only going to be less than the original fight. I know a lot of people like a rematch, but either way, you know, we've seen the fight. We saw it happen. It's not like it was a close fight back and forth where both guys had their moments. Masvidal just destroyed him. You know? It's the same way an Aldo versus McGregor rematch would never be the same as the first fight. All of the hype and all of the build-up was put together and built up into their first fight. There's no hype for the rematch whatsoever. Oh, what if the cut doesn't happen? Well, the cut has happened, and it's probably going to happen again because cuts only reopen more easily than the first time. Like, there's no storyline for a rematch with Masvidal versus Diaz unless they do it down the line, and there's been a little bit of breathing time between the pair of them, and maybe Nate Diaz has won a fight in the meantime. Masvidal's turning down Usman. I've never heard of this. Even Conor McGregor and Colby. And here's what I want to get to in this video. People call out... No one calls out Masvidal for being a bitch, but people call out Conor McGregor and Colby Covington for being a bitch. Even Conor McGregor, if he said... They said, who would you want to fight at a 170-pound division? Masvidal, Colby, or Usman? And Conor McGregor, instead of picking the easier fight for him, which is Masvidal, because it is an easier fight than Kamaru Usman style-wise. Masvidal's going to stand and trade. That's what McGregor likes to do. He said, I want the belt. That's what all fighters want. They want the belt around their waist to say that they're the best. That's what McGregor wanted. When he was offered, who would you choose between Masvidal and Usman? He said Usman. The belt means more to him than the money fight. That's what all fighters would say. Even Colby Covington. Who do you want next? Rematch with Usman. He's the best in the division, or so is perceived to be the best in the division, even if Colby thinks otherwise. He has to at least acknowledge that, hey, right now, with the belt around his waist, he's conceived as the best in the division right now, or perceived as the best in the division. Colby wants to rematch with Usman. So how can we call Colby a bitch and a pussy, but not Masvidal? Masvidal seems to be getting a pass here, even though he's very clearly declining a title shot to fight a guy who's ranked number 10 in a division that he's already beaten. Who's going to call him out? He's literally ducking someone in broad daylight. And he's supposed to be the Miami gangster. The BMF. What kind of BMF not only refuses to put the BMF title on the line in his future fights, which we can talk about, because what kind of BMF does that shit? If you're the BMF, I would like you to put that shit on the line every single time you go out there. But no, Masvidal is not going to be putting the BMF belt on the line in any of his future fights. He probably will against Nate Diaz in a rematch because he knows he's going to fucking win. Because Nate Diaz is only going to get worse as time goes on and he takes more and more damage. Either way, what kind of BMF turns down the title shot? Not my BMF. That's not the bad motherfucker of the UFC. The one guy in the UFC that's turning down title shots. Even Colby Covington, even after getting finished by Usman, I know it was a weird situation, but either way, even after losing to Usman, wants to rematch with Usman. You've got to give him some credit there. You've got to give Conor McGregor some credit for saying that rather than Masvidal or Diaz at 170, I want the gold in Kamaru Usman. That's what all the fighters want. So at least that's one thing that all fighters have in common. They all want the belt. Except for the BMF, who gets offered a title shot that everyone wants in their career after all of these years of grinding for it, and he turns it down to fight Nate Diaz in a rematch. One thing I do want to mention here, before we do come out and call Jorge Masvidal a hypocrite and a ducker and a pussy for not fighting Usman, I do want to say, what's Usman doing right now? I would expect Usman to be on Twitter and Instagram berating the shit out of Masvidal every other second of the day, saying that he's a pussy and a bitch. But so far, all he's done is retweeted Ali Abdelaziz's tweet about the #1 contender wanting to fight Nate Diaz and McGregor should fight Usman next. I thought this was the time for Usman to get his shirt off, lay in bed, flex his traps, and talk nonsense about Masvidal ducking him. But he hasn't said any of that and hasn't done any of that, which is really weird to me. So I don't know what's going on, but for the foreseeable future, until we find out otherwise, like let's say we find out that Masvidal isn't fighting Kamaru Usman because Usman versus McGregor is happening. First of all, that would be a disgrace to the sport to give McGregor a title shot at 170 when he holds a number 13 ranking in that division. That makes zero sense whatsoever. But either way, is Masvidal ducking Usman? Because he kind of is. And until we find out what Usman's doing, I'm going to go off the assumption that Masvidal is ducking Usman because he doesn't want to fight him. You've got a chance at gold, and you're saying no. All throughout your career, you've said that's what you wanted. But now you're presented with the opportunity to make $500,000 against a guy for the belt, and $500,000 against a guy without a belt. You want the guy without a belt because it's easier for you. And you're not going to take the one chance you might have in your entire career if something does go wrong at fighting for the world championship. You're ducking him. Like, there's no cool way to do this. Like, I just want to fix the Nate situation. No one cares. Fight Usman. That's the fight, what everyone wants to see. More people would care about the Usman versus Masvidal fight than would care about the Nate Diaz versus Masvidal rematch. I can assure you that. Maybe the numbers won't be the same because, of course, Kamaru Usman is the worst possible champion to have and doesn't bring in any numbers whatsoever on his own and is only as good as the people that he fights. And they bring all the numbers to the table. Colby Covington. No one knew about Kamaru Usman until he got the belt, and still no one wants him as champion right now. But what you can't deny is that Masvidal's ducking him. Like and subscribe. I would care way more about Usman versus Masvidal than I would about a Nate Diaz versus Masvidal rematch. Maybe the numbers, again, the pay-per-view might not be the same, but the hype and the anticipation for the event would be way less than if Masvidal finally got his title shot that he doesn't want. Whatever, man. Masvidal's ducking Usman, I guess. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye.